is VOA News. I'm Laurel Bowman. At roughly the 500th day of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, that country is advancing slowly without enough arms and ammunition and with its main cities under constant threat. Now the U.S. has decided it will provide cluster munitions to Ukraine. The AP's Ed Donahue reports.
National Security Adviser Jake Sullivan vows the U.S. will not leave Ukraine defenseless.
We continue to stand with the people of Ukraine as they defend their sovereignty, their freedom, and their democracy.
Sullivan says Ukraine has promised to use these weapons carefully. Cluster munitions have a track record for causing many civilian casualties.
Russia has been using cluster munitions since the start of this war to attack Ukraine. Russia has been using cluster munitions with high dud or failure rates of between 30 and 40%. In this environment, Ukraine has been requesting cluster munitions in order to defend its own sovereign territory.
Sullivan says the U.S. will send a version of the munition that has a reduced dud rate, meaning fewer of the smaller bomblets fail to explode. Ed Donahue, Washington.
Washington and Beijing should communicate directly on concerns about specific economic practices, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says, urging greater cooperation between the world's two biggest economies despite fraught ties. Dozens of marches against police violence in France are planned after authorities banned a memorial rally, fearful of reigniting the recent unrest that engulfed the country. At least 7 people are killed and dozens more injured in India after clashes over local polls in West Bengal, a state notorious for political violence during election campaigns. And Iran hangs 2 men in public over a mass shooting last year. This is VOA News. No one from the Russian Wagner military group has yet visited a disused military camp that Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko has offered for Wagner's use. That's what an advisor to the Belarus defense minister told reporters. Reuters' Alice Rizzo has more.
Wagner's chief Yevgeny Prigozhin was supposed to stand down his mercenaries and move to Belarus in exchange for Russian President Vladimir Putin dropping charges against him. These were the terms of an agreement brokered by Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko last month to end an armed mutiny by Wagner, the gravest challenge to Putin in his 23 years in power. But the deal does not seem to be playing out on those lines. On Friday, Guy Falkenbridge, Reuters Russia's bureau chief, visited the camp.
What we saw were 300 big tents surrounded by forest. And what the takeaway of all of this is that if Wagner isn't at the camp.
And here's a look back now at what was actually not the real news this week on social media. AP correspondent Jackie Quinn reports.
It was another week of false claims shared by social media users. Here are the facts. Here in the U.S., Oregon does not have more registered voters than residents. The opposite is true. There are more residents than registered voters by well over 1.2 million people. And aerial footage of a massive structure engulfed in flames shows a fire at a post office in the Philippines in May, not a French library set on fire amid protests over the police killing of a teenager in France. And Politico did not publish an article about the war in Ukraine titled 20 Million Lives for the Sake of Freedom, inferring that Ukraine would need to sacrifice tens of millions of lives to win its war against Russia. That falsified image was tweeted by Russia's embassy in South Africa. Politico has confirmed to the Associated Press that they did not run such a story. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
U.S. President Joe Biden will attend next week's NATO summit, and President Biden announces that the United States has fully destroyed its decades-old stockpiles of chemical weapons, a milestone hailed as completing the elimination around the world of all known stores of the agents of mass death. A businesswoman and opposition senator with indigenous roots has jolted Mexican politics with a bid to replace President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, fashioning herself as a self-styled champion of the underprivileged. For more stories, please visit us online at voanews.com. I'm Laurel Bowman for VOA News.
Thank you for watching. Can you do me a favor? Please leave a comment in the comments section below. That would really help. Thank you, and see you again soon.